does credit score matter in Australia? Good question. Did it matter before the GFC, Ben?
Post GFC, we did inherit this sort of credit scoring system. Now, it's not to say that banks didn't look at the fundamentals that we're talking about here, but ultimately it has meant that since that time, we've moved to a credit scoring model. And that model is just assessing people's quality based on several metrics around that risk. So the answer is, yep, credit scores now are a thing in Australia, and it's important that we're just aware of them. We shouldn't make them sort of control our lives, but ultimately those people who are good with money, you won't have to worry about it because you're just getting on with life. But those people who have had difficult situations or change of circumstances, and they've had late repayments or defaulted on some certain debts, this stuff really starts to matter for them because they are penalised in several ways. They are penalised obviously with a low score, which could restrict them from getting what we might call prime credit opportunities, which means lower credit opportunities versus, those in second tier markets or subprime lending sort of markets where we might also see higher interest rates because you've posed a risk because you've got a proven record of not necessarily meeting your debt obligations. So I think it is important to understand that there are consequences associated with how you manage debt and what they might mean in terms of any future debt that you take on.
And as we pivot into the digital age, Ben, it's getting easier and easier for these credit agencies to look under the bonnet and see how good a money manager you actually are. So, yes, to Ben's point, your credit score does play a major role in whether you can get a loan, the interest rate you'll pay, even approvals for rental properties, phone plans, buy now, pay later services. So it is important. So I guess by nature, which end of the spectrum, the higher the credit score, the better the financial opportunities. The lower the credit score, the more difficulty. I kind of paint that out, Ben, even though it might seem logical. But how is it calculated in Australia? Well, it's a numerical rating up to either 1,000 or 1,200. So there's three major credit reporting agencies: Equifax, Experian, and Ilion. Equifax is up to 1,200, and the other two, Experian and Ilion, up to 1,000. And Ben, you can actually go and check your scores for free. So we're going to put some links on the screen here. And for those who are listening on at home, we'll put them in the show notes. But if you go to equifax.com.au, experian.com.au, or checkyourcredit.com.au, there you can go and actually have a look under the bonnet and see what it looks like for you, Ben.
So it's really important, again, in terms of from a lending point of view, and I'm talking here about mortgages, you don't want to really put 6 or 7 or even 4 or 5 applications up to multiple lenders, because as that credit assessor is looking at your application, looking at credit, they're saying, this is interesting. They've applied for 3 different other lenders as well as us.
What do they know that we don't know?
Yeah, exactly. So there's just a flag straight away on that file to sort of say, I wonder if they're disclosing what they disclose on the first couple of applications. In other words, are they creating a fraudulent application here by not disclosing, I don't know, potentially private school fees or other commitments or other loans that they have? And so that really does put some red flags up there for those credit assessors to understand exactly why that is. Now, we do know that some mortgage brokers will shop around to try and get the best deal. So it's about getting that balance right and making sure that they're not wrecking your credit file in regards to how those applications put forward. What else have we got on that list there, Bryce?
And to your point that you just said then, Ben, it kind of is another way of going at why you should get an investment-savvy mortgage broker, because they aren't going to be hitting your file without actually going, well, here's all the options. We know this as part of our IP in our head, as part of the system that we work through. And then once we lodge the application, it's usually the one that's had some pre-work done versus the enthusiastic amateur that runs around making the hits to the credit rating that you just spoke to. So it kind of highlights another really, really important reason why you'd have an investment-savvy mortgage broker.
So in terms of how you improve that credit score, where effectively you don't necessarily go too hard too often on all of those little buy now, pay laters or the interest-free terms or the credit rollovers, that's really important. The other one is obviously just, set up your, we talk about a primary account. get everything sort of paid straight away from direct debit from there, or connected to your credit card, as long as there's no excessive fees in terms of the transaction on the credit card. Remembering that's just a calculation that you need to do. Also, certainly reducing any credit limits that you're not necessarily using is always going to be helpful as around that. And then think about the credit limits that you're actually applying for. Like if you're applying for a $40,000 credit card, why do you need $40,000 on credit card? You shouldn't be spending $40,000 on living costs on a day-to-day basis, a month to month, and basically having that paid. So 10 or 15 might be enough in terms of that. Now, if you have got large payments, like in my case, if it's private school fees, we do pay that on the credit card. So we basically push the limit, clear it, and then pay for the school fees, and then basically pay that off. And we obviously get the points associated with doing that type of thing in terms of what that looks like. Then you've got obviously to check your credit reporting for errors. They can make errors. At the end of the day, you could potentially be allocated a loan application that you never took out or that you never activated. I've got a good example for myself. Years ago with a Macquarie loan, they gave me a complimentary Macquarie credit card. I never opened it. It just basically sat there. And so, but that was on my credit file as having a Macquarie loan, a credit card, I should say. So ultimately, I got them to remove that as part of that particular story. So they are some of the ones. What else you got there, Bryce?
It's the flip side of some of the other things we said to be mindful of. So maintain those older credit balances, use a mix of credit responsibly, and avoid, the payday buy now, pay later drop. So
Beautiful.